Hello out there, we're on the air, it's hockey night tonight. Tension grows, the whistle blows, and the puck goes down the ice. The goalie jumps and the players bump and the fans all go insane. Someone roars, Bobby scores at the good old hockey game. Oh, the good old hockey game is the best game you can name.
Welcome to the New York Hockey Report. I am Joe Soccoa, and this is the NHL 2018-2019 season preview as we get you ready for the NHL season. Now, the games have started already, but we're only one game into the season. But that's okay because we will talk about plenty of what is to come for the upcoming hockey season. It's always an exciting time of the year when the hockey season gets going. So let's dive right into it. And we're going to focus, of course, on our three local teams first. We start with the New York Rangers, who are coming into this season with a new look, a new regime, and certainly with some higher than what most people will think of expectations for this upcoming season. And it all started back on the deadline back in February, in which Glenn Sather and Jeff Gorton penned a letter to season ticket holders assuring them that this was the right course of action to begin the rebuild because the core of the New York Rangers was no more, and it's time to build this franchise for winning stability for the future. And that's exactly what they did. They cleaned some house. They brought in some draft picks. They drafted very well, according to many of the analysts that are out there. And they have a lot of blue-chip assets now, in which Jeff Gorton called a pretty good problem to have, considering that when you have 29, 30 other teams calling you about those blue-chip assets, it's always a good thing when you hear that. So obviously very confident in the group that he has drafted. And in that time, last season, the Rangers farm system was ranked near the bottom of the league. They enter this season in the top 10, ranked at number 7. So that really goes a long way. And considering that they were able to do that from February until this current time is something to really marvel at, and the direction that this team is going into. And of course, this is the direction that's going to continue going forward. Now, a lot of people are sitting here saying the Rangers are not going to compete this year as well as everyone else because they're continuing that rebuild. They're still trying to bring in some young players, possibly get a couple of more draft picks to solidify the farm system and their junior hockey programs as well. But the future certainly does look bright for the New York Rangers. It also started on April the 7th when it was the last game of the season. They lost to the Philadelphia Flyers, and then hours after that game, Alain Vigneault was relieved of his coaching duties, and in May, the Rangers selected their new coach, Boston University's coach David Quinn, to come in and re-energize this group. And of course, with a young core coming in for the New York Rangers, why not have a college coach who can communicate to players better than other coaches? And, you know, it's not a knock on Alain Vigneault, but we kind of saw the writing on the wall that there was not much of communication between himself and the younger players. He trusted certain guys, had them out on the ice in different situations where maybe they weren't warranted in those situations, but nonetheless, a new regime has taken over. And leading up to the season, it was really a lot of good vibes around that room. Every player in that room was talking about the vibes. A lot of things were being said about how the coach's demeanor was and what he brought to the table, and even the other coaches within the organization as well. So there's a lot of positives to look forward to with this New York Rangers team and young group. Of course, you do have a couple of the veterans that are there that, of course, will have to step up, looking for bounce-back years after really it was an overall disappointing year for the Rangers, not making the playoffs for the first time in quite some time. And the fact that, you know, these veterans such as Zuccarello and Kreider and Zibanejad were not putting the puck in the back of the net, and they just did not have statistically good years going into last season and coming into it now. They feel as if that it's their job and opportunity to bounce back and show that they still have plenty of hockey left to play in their careers. a very interesting note from the Rangers game last night in which they opened up the season at Madison Square Garden. It was a loss to the Nashville Predators, but a very impressive looking team thus far. They had a lot of chances. That's just the problem is they don't have finishers. And that's something that, of course, the coaching staff and the front office will certainly address as they go forward, but they do have players on this team who are capable of finishing, and that's where they need to step up. That's where guys like Kreider, Zuccarello, Zibanejad, and even Kevin Hayes step into the equation in which they should be able to finish off a hockey game. But very impressive nonetheless that they were able to stick with a Nashville team who won the President's Trophy last season, and they had a lot of chances. Lundqvist looked really good, as he normally does, and this is also kind of a redemption year for him. He comes in with a little bit of a different mindset, a little bit of kind of going back to the way he was, and he talked about that as far as him being deeper in his net where he used to be. Last year he used to come out, challenge the shooters a lot more, but he's going back to what he feels comfortable in doing, and last night, I mean, he really showed flashes of the old Henrik Lundqvist, so it's going to be interesting to see the type of season that he has as the anchor of this team, the franchise player of this team, considering that they are in this rebuild and he is all for it and wants to be part of this Rangers turnaround, and they, of course, hope that the turnaround would be quick because he is 36 years old, going to be 36 years old in March, and certainly wants to try and win a championship here in New York, and he is very committed to doing that and staying here to do that. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see the type of season he has, given the fact he has this young team in front of him. The other thing that the Rangers wanted to address is their presence in front of the net, and that was something that head coach Quinn had talked about coming into the season, leading into camp, and then working throughout camp and preseason, was really clearing the front of the net, clearing the garbage out in front of the net, because last year too many teams had too many opportunities in front of the net in front of Henrik Lundqvist and gave him no help. They're looking for it to happen this year. There is some veteran leadership within this defensive core, but there's also some young guys mixed in, which makes it a pretty good balance. Now it's just a matter of these guys stepping up. Kevin Shattenkirk coming into a fully healthy year. Of course, he played on a really bad knee from the start of the season last year, basically waited until December, January to finally get it fixed up, and then just was shut down the rest of the year. So he had quite a bit of time to get himself back in order, and he'll have to get back into the swing of things. Mark Stoll, who I thought had a really good bounce-back year last year, he's going to be counted on. He's also going to be the only Ranger on this team to wear the A on his sweater for all 82 games. There's a rotation amongst the forwards that are going to be doing that, but Mark Stoll is going to be the guy who's wearing that A, so they're counting on big leadership for him. So, him and Lundqvist really being the two patriarchs on this team, being here for quite some time, so he's looking for a bounce-back season. Brady Shea, a young defenseman, had a great year last year. He's now looking to build off of that year as well and really also take on a leadership role himself. He kind of talked about that in preseason and in camp, that he wants to be a leader. He wants to take these younger kids that are younger than him, under his wing and provide the leadership that he can. And that speaks volumes coming from a young defenseman like Brady Shea to want to be a leader in that locker room. So that's something also to look at as well as the season goes on. So then you get the mix of veterans in there. Adam McQuaid is in there, acquired from Boston right in the middle of training camp, to bring a little bit more of a physical presence as well. And then Neil Pionk, who had a really good showcase last season. The front office and management thought that he had a really good camp as well, and he made this team as well. And they're going to carry an eighth defenseman, so you're going to have a Tony DeAngelo scratched here and there, things of that nature. But this defensive core looks a little bit better, and that's one of the things that this team and the coaching staff is going to preach on, is making sure that teams don't have second and third and even fourth opportunities in front of the net. So that's something to look forward to. Another interesting stat that we saw flash across the screen in that game was 10 out of the 23 forwards the New York Rangers have currently on their active roster are all 26 and younger. That's the first time since 1956, 1957 that they have that going on for them. And so it really shows how committed they are to this rebuild, but it also shows how young this team is and how fast and quick they can be and really be the stepping blocks for this team going forward. So there's a lot of good vibe and good energy in that room. However, we're not really expecting a lot. Now, the coaching staff, the players, the front office people believe that this team can surprise people. And I believe that they absolutely can surprise some people and sneak up on some teams. But I still think that this is a transition year. I still think that this is a year in which they're going to build on what they have. Listen, anything can happen. We kind of saw what happened with the Vegas Golden Knights last year. Nobody expected an expansion team to go to the Stanley Cup Finals, but they did, and that was all made with teams' scraps, quote-unquote, if you want. But I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying that the Rangers can absolutely surprise some teams and sneak up on some teams, but I still think the majority of this year is going to be a transition year. It was a tough loss last night, a game in which they could have won, but they battled hard, and they stuck with this defending President's Trophy Nashville Predators team very well. So those were good signs as well. You kind of heard it in the post-game with David Quinn, but he also felt that there's a lot more for improvement. But it's game 1 of 82, so still a lot of things to look forward to for this Rangers team. Again, not much to expect here. If you want to get my prediction on it, I do think that they are going to surprise some teams. I believe Vegas put them at 74.5 points, which was probably near the bottom 3 of the predictions. I think that number is doable. I think they could absolutely get over that number because they can surprise some teams. So that's something to look out for. On the forward side of things with the New York Rangers, we talked about the guys that are in need of bounce backs. Chris Kreider, who of course is that consistently inconsistent player who has the talent, shows some flash a couple of games, and then disappears for a stretch at a time. They need more consistency from him. They need him in front of that net. They need him to be a presence on the ice, use his body that he can. He's lighter. He feels a little bit quicker. Of course, he had that scare last year with the blood clots, and then, of course, he had the thoracic outlet syndrome surgery that he removed a portion of his rib to kind of fix that. So he's coming in a lot healthier. They really need a consistent Kreider. Zibanejad as well. They need him to be healthy. He's coming off of a few concussions of last season. They also need his shot at the point on the power play to be as big as it was last year. The guy that I really want to see jump out and really be the person to kind of put the puck in the net is Pavel Buchnevich. He no longer has Alain Vigneault, who did not trust him much, who did not deploy him properly, who will now get a chance to shine, I think, under Coach Quinn. He is a guy who I'm looking at to have a big year and a big step forward for this Rangers team, considering the amount of or lack of playing time he had last season. So I think Pavel Buchnevich, for me, is the guy for the New York Rangers this year. Then you talk about the mix of rookies that are in this lineup. Philip Hedl, who impressed a lot of people in camp. He did have a taste of the NHL towards the end of last season. He made this team over Elias Anderson. I understand the explanation to it that general manager Jeff Gorton talked about prior to the start of the season was factly that, Elias needs to play big minutes, and he's not going to play the big minutes up here at the NHL level just yet on this current team, but things can absolutely change. So right now, he's better being in Hartford, being a top-line center, getting some big-time minutes so he can transition nicely into the NHL. So I absolutely understand that. I understand that maybe Philip Hedl is a little bit further along, not too much in front of Anderson, but enough where he was able to earn a fourth-line spot on this team. Brett Howden, he opened up a lot of eyes in camp, his presence on the ice, his vision on the ice, and he also adds some size to this team as well, so that's another thing to look at for the New York Rangers. And then Vinny Lettieri, who made this team really in the last week of preseason, and that's when you asked Coach Quinn, if you asked Jeff Gorton, and they talked about that when the question was asked if he in fact did make the team out of the last week of the preseason, and they said he absolutely did. He is going to be that guy who's going to try to get the dirty goals, kind of get under the skin a little bit of the opposing team in front of the net, and that's exactly why he earned his spot. So there's a good mix in this room. There's a good mix on the ice, and I think that this Rangers team can absolutely surprise some people going forward for the regular season. So we'll just have to see and watch it all unfold. On to the next team, which is the New York Islanders as part